David Gray here with us. This is part of our Trillium Family Mental Health Matters series. And David, your songs have always, especially to me, and I think so many people who listen to you, get right to the heart of the matter. So do you find that music is therapeutic for you in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very cathartic thing, and has always been the creative act as a means of coming to terms with experience has always been a part of my makeup. Even since I was a little child, I was making things. I know all children do, but I think with a particular intensity. So it's a vital part of my coping strategy. The songs provide some kind of ballast which keeps the ship floating. So it's like you can pour a lot in there, and as detached things they then take on a life of their own. And anyway, it's very much interwoven with making sense of the world.
Yeah. Was Lately actually written about a depressive episode?
No, nothing out of the usual. No, it just, that's just what came out. So I guess there was a period of sort of it came in the wake of a period of high tumultuous period of high impact, when so many different things all happened, becoming famous and successful, and the sort of vortex that creates. And then I lost my dad, and we had a baby, and then a couple of friends that died during that period. It was a kind of I lost my bearings for sure. The compass points weren't sort of lining up at all for one. You have to make sense of the world anew. So it came in that period. So as I was finding my musical feet again with that Life in Slow Motion record, that was just one of the things that came out. And I don't generally tend to try and be autobiographical, but I think a lot of stuff came out on that record that was related to what I'd been through a few years before, which I was still digesting and making sense of.
What do you do right now when you're touring and weird sleep patterns and all the strange things that happen for an artist who's going out and about, to make sure that your mental health is intact and that you're doing self-care?
It's really interesting. I have to look after myself. Back in the day, we were young and up for anything, let's say, and the sort of excess just completely melts your brain, and you can't really make sense of the interrelationships, which become strained during a tour. Inevitably there's the intensity of the show, there's the travel, there's exhaustion, and there's all the internal dynamics. And if I, as the sort of central hub of the whole thing, don't have a rational view, it can get a bit off kilter. I think this is just the nature of touring. So it certainly does play games with your mind, 100%. And every day you just never know what's quite in store. So some days when everyone you'd think would be exhausted, everyone seems strangely buzzed and energized, and you have a fantastic sound check and a great gig. And then other days when you've had a couple of days off and you think everyone's going to be mad for it, people will be really odd and detached, and you just don't know what's going on in their lives or in their minds. So it's a challenge for the brain, which is obviously just an organ that's related to your energy flow and your general sort of rhythm as well. So your body feels a bit out of whack, but your mind too. So I guess I just try and stay one cool remove from everything. So to do that, I just look after myself. I'll have a few mad nights on the tour when I decide to go nuts and stay up on the bus until we get there at 5 o'clock in the morning and listening to music and dancing or whatever, and having some fun, because you got to let go. But most of the time I'm quite moderate now. I'm just, because the shows are what's most important, and I feel like I have to keep my I have to be sure of what I'm thinking and what I'm seeing in other people. So, music attracts people who are a little bit on the edge, let's say. So we all of us have our sort of bipolar issues or our sort of addictive issues. There's lots of sort of colourful characters involved, and you've got to try and keep them together and pointing in the same direction. So yeah, that's a big part of touring. I mean, I've done it so many times. We were just saying, we were looking at each other. Jack Nicholson-esque was how my guitar roadie described himself this morning,
right.
Which I think is an excellent adjective, basically, for one of the sort of bus faces you get when you kind of emerge out of the bus. So but it's all kind of familiar. So there's a thousand strange feelings that come with the sort of constant carousel of travelling around the world and playing a show every night.
Do you think there's anything else that we could be doing to help reduce stigma with musicians, with people like yourself that are in the entertainment industry and so closely aligned to creativity and art, and the people who might be most likely to suffer?
I think there's a lot of progress been made in terms of the way that the people look at mental health and creativity. I think there's a dangerous thing when you say that let's call it the Van Gogh or Van Gogh if you're over here. Madness equals creativity, genius equals that's a ridiculous and mythology which I think needs to be eradicated. My biggest concern, if you talk about mental health, I think prison, most of the people in prison have mental health issues. That is a fact. It's ridiculous to just lock people up. And not people on the streets, everywhere you go, they have mental health issues. These people are mentally ill, and we just let them lie around on the streets. I think it's a total disgrace. It's the same in England. It's the same here. Right? It's shocking. It's deeply, deeply shocking. These people are deeply disturbed. They need help. But society doesn't want to really look at them. And it's a whole can of worms. So I think within the creative world, you've got people with sort of obviously across the spectrum. You have anything from as shocking as someone who's depressive, like Kurt Cobain, who takes his own life in a horrific way, and various other people in that mold, which are hard to come to terms with. Then you've got people like Daniel Johnston, who obviously is kind of a bit out there, but on the sort of autistic spectrum, and yet is sort of hailed as a gifted man. And that there's been a lot of progress in the way that being a creative person is, you've got to have a thin skin because the world has to really affect you. And yet the danger is then, do you have a thick enough skin to superimpose when you need one? When you actually go out and then people are looking at you as you're emanating whatever it is, returning this information that you've gathered and turned into song or art or whatever, because the world has its own way of looking at things and it's sometimes hard to take. So that causes a lot of distortion and turbulence in people's minds. But yeah, so I think there's been a lot of progress anyway in the way that people look at the brain and mental health in inverted commas loosely, and creativity. There's a lot more on the spectrum. There's a lot more shades now that are recognised, and that's true of the way that we look at brain disorders in general. We're just beginning to understand the brain. But anyway, on a basic mental health thing, musicians aside, we are all a bit mental. I mean, that's definitely true. But yeah, I think it's just, the statistics for people in prison in the UK. I can't speak for America. It's absolutely flabbergasting to realise how many of them have an issue, and they've had abusive childhoods. Not all of them. I mean, some people have just gone out and been naughty. Thought, well, sod getting a job. I'm just going to keep doing this. It's more fun. but a lot of people have it's just stupid. It's drug abuse. It's just petty crime. It's nothing that sinister. It's just anyway. And obviously drugs will only make things worse. As in like hard drugs. It's like if you've got mental issues. As I was saying earlier about being on the tour bus, it's like it makes it so much harder. You're coming out the other side of something after the high. You're in the sort of you enter the no man's land where you're not quite sure where you are, and you don't really identify. You can identify the high, but it's harder to identify the subtleties of the low, which just seem like oh shit, is this what it's really like when you're not high? So anyway, blah, blah.
David, great. Thank you so much.